hero for tonight. Our fourth hero for tonight is a nurse by profession. She graduated Bachelor of Science in Nursing at the University of Santo Tomas, one of the pioneer staff nurse in St. Luke's Medical Center in Bonifacio Global City, and she was recognized as one of the most commended staff nurses. She then started working in Oman in 2012, and she's the eldest among three siblings. Can't wait to hear more about her career journey, and let us give a virtual welcome to Nurse Grace Audrey Veluz.
Good day, everyone. Thanks for being with us here today at the Heroes Online Summit 4. My name is Grace Audrey Veluz. I've been a nurse here in the Sultanate of Oman for 9 years, and I'm here to share with you my experience of working as an OFW nurse during this COVID-19 pandemic. So in June of 2020, I got assigned to the COVID ward in my hospital. It was a very vulnerable time because it was early on in the crisis, back when the world did not yet know how to properly manage COVID cases. So most of the strategies were experimental, and it was all very hit or miss. And just like everyone else, I was filled with so much anxiety. But at the same time, I thought that it would be a challenge that I had to accept wholeheartedly because of my commitment to my profession. I asked my family to always include me in their prayers, but in return, I also prayed hard for my mother, who could not sleep in the days after I told her about my new assignment. I also had to accept that I needed to isolate myself from my friends. With my family far away, my friends were my main support system here in Oman. It would be all the more difficult enduring this challenge without their company, but I understood that I had to stay away from them just for a while to keep them safe, like as a precautionary measure. So caring for COVID patients was surreal. It was not as simple as caring for ordinary patients because of the unknowable threat that seemed to come at you from all directions. And it made one so paranoid to think that no matter how hard and tediously you tried to protect yourself, you could still get infected. And no matter how young and strong you thought you were, things could go downhill from there. And true enough, one fine day in July 2020, I came home from work feeling extremely exhausted. I did not mind the tiredness so much because I was used to being bone tired after a shift, so I went to work as normal the next day. I still felt exhausted the entire morning, but I thought that was because had just been a really busy shift. So by evening, I was already running a fever, and one reading even went up to 39.8 degrees Celsius. Screaming in denial, but I was already 70% of what was happening. So finally, the results of the swab test I had done came in the next day and confirmed it. I was COVID-19 positive. I couldn't explain what I felt when the nurse broke the news to me. It was partly relief that my suspicion was right, but also partly bewilderment. And there were so many questions in my mind that nobody could give me the answers to, like, why did it have to be me? Didn't I wash my hands enough? Didn't I disinfect my things well enough? Had I worn my mask improperly? And of course, I asked myself, how am I going to survive this? And I went as far as, am I going to die soon? I did not inform my family nor any of my relatives because I didn't want them to worry about me. There was nothing they could do anyway, being so far away. So I spent 14 days in isolation, sick and alone. Trying to stay alive while being continuously breathless isn't a joke. I couldn't eat because even the simple act of chewing tired me out. I couldn't move much either. Turning from one side to another in bed was difficult. And the bathroom was only 7 steps from my bed, but it took everything I had in me just to get to the toilet and back. I couldn't sleep well because I would break out into coughing spells that would take minutes to recover from. And those few minutes felt like an eternity, like I was drowning on dry land, and I felt so helpless. There was a time when my coughing spells were so bad, my oxygen saturation levels dropped below 90%. So I had to drive myself to the hospital to get help because I really felt sick. But I had to do it all on my own. Or now that it was confirmed that I was COVID positive, it was even more important not to get in contact with anybody else. I didn't get admitted, so I just went back home and continued my isolation. Then I returned to work after the required 14 days, but I still didn't feel like I was fully recovered. My appetite was better, but sometimes I'd still occasionally feel out of breath, even while at rest. By the end of September 2020, I started getting palpitations and my heart would beat so fast, also even while at rest. After a few days of observation and after being convinced by a friend who works in the cardiology clinic, I went there for a checkup. And I found out that my heart wasn't getting enough oxygen. So thank God the problem was very minimal, but I had to take a medicine for a few months for this unfortunate effect of COVID-19. So, fast forward to September 2021 and today, we now have 0 COVID cases in our hospital. In Oman, the national statistics of COVID cases have started to improve. The vaccination program here was able to quickly alleviate the COVID situation. As of this time, 78% of Oman's population is fully vaccinated. We're still trying our best to not be complacent in our victories. But for now, it is enough comfort for me to know that we have finally gained an advantage in this war against COVID. While I lay in bed with my thoughts during my 14 days of isolation, I sought to find meaning in the experience. So I began with asking, why did it have to be me? But I ended by saying, since it has to be me, then what? What did my fear have to teach me about myself, about the way I responded to challenges, about how much I valued life? What did being alone teach me about how much I cared about my loved ones? What did being part of the nationwide COVID response team teach me about the changes I wanted to see in my community? So a year later, I can sum up the answers to these questions with the acronym RTPCR. So R for readiness, T for teamwork, P for positivity, C for compassion and commitment, and R for resilience. So let me walk you through that. We start with R for readiness. This is not simply about putting together a go bag and making sure your health insurance is in order, although that is part of it. In general, this pandemic has affected all of us, with the majority of people losing their sources of income. Many of us are making impulsive, indulgent decisions, thinking life is short and unpredictable, so let's enjoy it while we can. However, the concept of living in the present is not applicable to all. On balance, we still have to think realistically of our future and the future of our livelihood. In this difficult time, it is important to have these serious talks with the people we work with and also with our families to talk about what we need to do to prepare for emergencies like lockdowns and COVID admissions. These are difficult conversations, but it is best to have them so we can sleep easily at night, knowing our loved ones are cared for. And as life is short and unpredictable, let us also take every chance to tell our friends and family that we love them. So we move on to teamwork. In the hospital setting, this is what always helps us accomplish our tasks in a timely and efficient manner. During the peak of the COVID crisis in our hospital, most of the senior staff were assigned in the COVID areas, and we were left to man the stations with younger, less seasoned staff members. Without teamwork, we wouldn't have survived the worst days. And teamwork is not limited to working with your professional colleagues. The concept of bayanihan at its core is teamwork with your neighbors. When the lockdown was implemented here in Oman, our kabayans who worked in the food industry were greatly affected. Through joint efforts from other kabayans, we were able to initiate a successful donation drive. P for positivity. On the darkest days, we have to look on the brighter side of things. In my experience with COVID, it was hard to accept at first, but at some point, I became certain I would survive. I prayed and held tight to the thoughts of the people who were wishing for me to get well, and it really helped me a lot. But this is not to say that the people who are upset about their COVID diagnosis do not easily recover. But I think it's important to remember that there is life beyond the 14 days of fear and isolation, just like there will be life beyond this pandemic. We should feel, accept, and embrace all the negative emotions that come with this period, but we should also eventually frame our thoughts in a way that gives meaning to this difficult experience. Real positivity is not about never feeling sad nor afraid about what is happening to you, but about feeling all of it and understanding that this challenge has a great purpose for you in the end. Compassion and commitment. We do not live only for ourselves, but also for the people in our community. This is lived also through the concept of bayanihan, as I mentioned earlier. And I remember while I was sick with COVID, a lot of people reached out and offered prayers, brought me food and help, even after I completed my isolation. It was also surprising that even those people who I really don't see every day and speak to every day were also there for me. And so we also have a responsibility to our country and the people as we have committed to our profession. Being of service to our patients is a form of self-sacrifice in a way that exemplifies the culture of caring. We go above and beyond what is being asked. Last but not the least, resiliency. This, I believe, is one of the greatest traits that we have as Filipinos. There is no virus that can take down our indomitable spirit. Of course, a crisis like COVID pandemic points out all the ways that we are unprepared for a disaster on the national level, at work, and as individuals. This pandemic is a harsh wake-up call for us to make changes, whether it's things as significant as the leaders we will vote for, or as small as poor health habits that could put us at bigger risk for COVID. Change is scary, but if we are able to weather disasters, lockdowns, illnesses, then that same resilience will help us to make the necessary changes needed for us to survive this crisis. More than resilient, Filipinos are adaptable, resourceful, and flexible, all things I have had to be as I fought COVID here, and all of the traits I know you all have in you as well. These traits, along with resilience, will be instrumental in helping you in your business or your work team survive and thrive during this pandemic. So I'm grateful to have this chance to share my story with you today, and perhaps this is one of the ways that my brush with COVID will be given meaning. If the lessons I have learned back then will be valuable to you now, then my experience will have served a purpose. Again, I'm Audrey Veluz, and I applaud all of you heroes who are here with us today. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Wow, thank you very much, Miss Audrey Veluz, for that sharing. Wow, may bago na tayong meaning ng RT-PCR, right? So, readiness, teamwork, positivity, compassion, and commitment, and resiliency. Ayan, there is life beyond pandemic. Tama ba? Type yes in the chat box if you agree on that. Thank you very much once again, Audrey. Feel free to message in our chat box your questions for our question and answer portion in a while. But before that, we would like to thank our sponsors.